Hello, and welcome to today's video in which I am wrapping up November's books. So we are kicking off with another one of those a kid's book about, which I was reading a couple of last month, and this one was a kid's book about empathy by Darren K. Roberts. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and in terms of like a blurb, it is what it says on the tin. It is a easy, friendly, stripped back to kind of the bare bones of what empathy is in a way that children will understand, and I think I liked it a little bit better than the other ones I've read. I feel like it was a little bit more involved in terms of the content, but it is still very sparse, very basic, just things to keep in my mind, I guess, for if I ever have a family eventually. These books are pretty decent for introducing them to concepts, I suppose. Next book I read was a graphic novel. This was Emily Carroll's When I Arrived at the Castle. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, and I find with Emily Carroll's books, I've read a couple of them now, they kind of always leave me wanting more. It just feels like there's lacking in something, and I can't exactly pinpoint the why of it, but that feeling is there. Anyway, we follow this kind of furry like character. I think she's a cat. Yeah, she's a cat who stumbles into this massive gothic mansion castle in the dead of night, full of rain, and I think she's there on a mission to murder or rid the world once and for all of the vampire countess that lives there. However, she is seduced by her ways. They have the back and forth of will they, won't they. She's clearly distressed in some way. That's why she's going on like this vengeance spree to kill the vampire. And there's, a little bit more story development there. I thought the illustration was beautiful, as always with Emily Carroll's works. The art is phenomenal. The story was quite interesting. It was intriguing. It just, again, I'm left like, cool, okay, on to the next book. You know what I mean? Which I wish wasn't the case, because I would love to own like a lovely collection of her work just for the art alone, but the story is just not as substantial, I find, as the art its own. So yeah, this one was a book that I borrowed from the library. The next book was an audiobook that I listened through my library app, and I have started my journey on the House of Night books. This was the first one, marked by PC and Kristen Cast, which I have since learned are a mother and daughter author duo. And there is some stuff, at least in that first book, that I would not have wanted to written about with my mother. Just putting that out there. This one I gave a 3.5 stars. There is a lot of dated stuff in this. The terminology, the way they talk about boys that are gay, so flippantly, and there was a sentence, I can't remember the exact thing, but it was basically saying, oh yeah, he doesn't count as a boy because he's gay. Like, whoa, what the heck? And then there was another thing that they were saying about this girl who was black, and it was supposed to be like complimentary, and she was like, oh, she looked like an African queen, beautiful, blah blah blah. Turned out the girl's like Caribbean descent, so it was one of those assumptions. It just felt annoying and icky to me, and I know it's from the character's perspective, but it's also like at that time they must have been somewhat thinking a little bit of that however many years ago, to think that was okay to put in there so flippantly and not like challenge it, because there was no challenging behavior. So yeah, it was just a bit icky in terms of that, but as a story itself, I'll definitely be continuing because I really did enjoy it. It was just so like easy listening, very Moorish, and we're basically following our main character, whose name I've completely forgotten, but she is basically sent to this school, the House of Night, to learn about all the ways of being a vampire, as a mark comes up on her face that is the sign of a vampire. So she has to uproot her whole life, leave her friends at school, and just completely assimilate in this new vampire hierarchy. Of course, you've got the mean girl division, you've got this teacher that sees this main character as something special and wants to push her to her limits, and her little friendship group as well, which is generally quite sweet. And of course, the bad boy that they want to have but can't, but wants to. It's just a lot, but generally speaking, very much enjoyed it. Would definitely be continuing on with the series. I don't know how far I will go though, because I know it's like 11, 12 books, something like that. So we shall see kind of when or if I dip out early. The next book I really wish I had my own copy of, but this is M.A. Bennett's Young Gothic, and oh my god, I absolutely adore this. I think I'm gonna do a review dedicated to this, so I'm gonna pause here and make myself a note. Note made. This story was a 5 out of 5 star for me. I think it released back in like summertime or something, and I picked it up perfectly around spooky season. We are following 4 characters as they find their way to this beautiful villa, which is the House of Horror. They are on this scheme, the Young Gothic scheme is what they dub it, and they are there for a summer holiday of crafting stories in the Gothic sense, whether that is spoken word poetry, filmmaking, written literature, acting. They all are sort of keen and interested to just have a writer's retreat away. Set in the villa that first housed the dead poets, and they are looked at as the archetypes of horror, bringing, you know, the likes of Frankenstein and the vampire, and all of these works into fruition. So it's basically like a retreat to inspire them to get writing, whether it is Gothic, whether it's not. That's kind of like what they hope for, but they just want to do this experiment. It is deep and dark, and lots of crazy things happen. It's fantasy horror, I would say, young adult, and oh my god, I loved every moment of it. I could not put that book down. That's why I say I wish I had a physical copy to own. It was fantastic. I loved it. I think it was my first book that I read by this author. She usually does like middle grade books, so I will go back, I think, and check those out. She also did Stags, which sounds like something I might enjoy, so we shall see. But yeah, this was fantastic. Talk more about that in a dedicated review. Following that, another book from the library, very library heavy. I've been trying to get through my big pile of books. It's become a problem since joining the library. I've just keep issuing books and sending them back and getting another book and like, oh, read that, send that back. But I need to chip away the ones that I've kind of used a lot of renews on. So that's the plan, especially for 2025. Anyway, I digress. So the next book I read was Fairy Tales Gone Bad, Zombierella by Joseph Coelho. I think I'm pronouncing his surname incorrectly, so I do apologise. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars, and it's the first book, I think, written in this series, but it's the second book that I've read. So they're not interconnected or anything like that. He just takes a fairy tale and he makes it like in poetry, twists it and makes it like darker and a bit more edgy for, I guess, the young ones that like a little bit of the macabre. And so in this story, obviously we're following Cinderella, but she's the zombie and she's getting her own back, and it's vengeance, but it's done so well. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed the Creeping Beauty one more so than this. I think I read that around August or so, but yeah, I still thought it was fun, and I like the illustrations in it, and I like the rhymes. It was a fun time. Okay, coming up to the last 2 books now. The second to last one is one that I'm definitely going to have to do a video on separately, whether I complete the trilogy and do it all together or whether I sporadically put them up every time I finish a book or so. But anyway, that is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This was a buddy read with the lovely Deborah at Hills of Books on Instagram, if you want to check her out. This was a long time waiting. I've been wanting to read this for a while, so I'm really happy we decided to give this a go together, like read it together and kind of help each other on the journey. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. We are following a cast of 6 characters who all get invited into this prestigious like academy of sorts. It's like a society, kind of university in tone, but very independent study, where they learn the extent of their magic and they can explore different like dissertations involving their magic specialisms, and it's so intense. It feels like a very intelligent novel. It's dark academia, it's fantasy, there's a lot of like political play within our characters. I just absolutely ate this up. I adored it. I listened to this as well as read it, and I felt like that really helped me to digest what was happening on the page, because I think personally, had I just read it, I would be rereading sentences again and again. Now, don't get me wrong, I did rewind a couple of times and go back to certain pages just to kind of grasp a bit better in detail, but I think had I not had that listening avenue as well, I would have been stuck a little bit, and that might have swayed the outcome of my overall enjoyment. But as it stands, 5 out of 5. Definitely will be doing a review in some capacity about this at some point in my life. The last book, I'm filming this on the 30th, so the last day of November, and I've literally just finished this minutes before. This is Sleeping Words Have No Memory by Yaroslav Barsukov. This was a book that I was on the tour for, which I really enjoyed, the digital tour, and I gave my thoughts and feelings sort of midway through because I hadn't quite finished it by the time my date came around, so I just gave like as I'm feeling, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. We're following Shay Ashcroft, who is kind of dismissed from his position as Minister to Internal Affairs. He gets sent across I guess across the country, because I think it's still within the borders, to kind of manage this structure building. The Duke is not happy that this guy has just suddenly been thrown upon him and is now micromanaging, and we're sending whisperings back to the Queen, but he is basically in charge of building this structure, which is supposed to be acting as a kind of lookout base, I would say, and protection against any oncoming war and armies. It reminds me in its structure and like the tiers that it describes a little bit of Babel. So each level there is something different going on. So it kind of made me think of that as well, but it is in itself, I guess you would say, a weapon, a defense weapon, anything like that. It would be used in a war setting. Anyway, when he ends up getting to that post, he finds out a lot more about the history and the legend surrounding this tower, and something specifically called the Mimic Tower, which a group of people that aren't native to the place that he is like overruling in a way are terrified of. They won't go anywhere near this tower, they won't work in it, they won't teach them about it. These people also seem to be ahead of the game in terms of technology, so they have these devices that are far superior to anybody else and what they've got, and so that's why they've been really like propositioned to come and work in these towers and help them kind of excel this militant weapon, this device, and they're just like, no, it's not happening. Anyway, finds out a load of stuff to do with this, a lot of myths and legends, and the story kind of takes root from there. It is a mixture of genres. You've got a bit of noir, you've got fantasy, sci-fi. The political intrigue in this one is absolutely fantastic. Shay obviously going from pick to post, because the reason why he didn't get to keep his minister position was because his queen ordered him to gas out a load of protesters, and he just wouldn't do it. So his punishment was to be shunted off to like a little village area in the country. Do you know what I mean? But the job is bigger and more detailed than he was expecting. There's more to it, right? So yeah, there's so many like people involved, there's so many plots going on in the background and the foreground. Yeah, especially with this tower, the devices and the technology of the people. They're called the Drakiri, I think I've pronounced that correctly. These are the people that are more advanced in technology that are living in the village and just across the world. And yeah, there's just so much that's going on, so I really enjoyed this. Definitely give this a go if you're interested in kind of like a genre mashup of things. It's got a lot of transferable points to the world today, I would say, as well, beneath the surface. So yeah, I thought it was a really important read as well as an entertaining read. So 2 physical books here that are my own, the rest are library books. But I had a generally successful reading month, I would say. I read 7 books in total. I only got to 3 out of my 9 books that I wanted for my TBR. But I am a mood reader, so I don't always hold myself like super close to that. I try not to anyway. But yeah, that is that. I'm going to have to sit down now and think about what I want to try and read during December. And with that, please do let me know what you have been reading, maybe what your favourite book was. I would have to say my favourites were Young Gothic and Atlas 6 for sure. They were both like 5-star reads for me. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I shall catch you in another video soon. Bye.